Hello, hello. I know you're all getting really tired of hearing my voice. I am so sorry, but we're almost done. Oh, good. I need to turn this. Good. My apologies. I didn't. Is it going? Yeah? Okay. I didn't explain myself real well earlier today. This session right now will encompass 3 parts, okay? And you'll see that on your schedule. When we are done with that, we will take our lunches, and so keep in mind you will get to go to a working breakout session to one of these. Okay, if you have more questions, want to explore more about one of these programs, that's what we'll do after you hear about all of them. Does that make sense? Okay, is that better? Okay. We are going to start out. David McCabe and Charles Harrell and name tags. Yes, good question, Steve. Thank you. When you are leaving, there will be a basket. I'll have Marco, and kudos to Marco to come on Saturday. Thank you for coming and helping us. All my non-technical skills here, I need him. Please put your name tags on in a basket or on the table. I will get a basket. So raise your hand. How do you like those versus the strings hanging around? Way better? Okay, we're improving. Okay, Christine, also, will you come up and join me? We are starting out with the international travel trip. This year in May, there were 20 of us that got to experience an incredible journey to Turkey. And I will let these folks share with you all their highlights and experiences. We will start off. I think you all have hopefully seen this. It's short. I'm going to play it again. This was the video that we had put together that I sent out to you. So enjoy, and then we will get started on the international trip. I encourage you to go back and watch this again. I will send it out again, but I cannot tell you what a life-changing experience this was for, I think, all of us, and they will kind of go into that a little bit more. Keep in mind, as Steve said, looking forward to maybe England coming up, envision how spectacular this was and how that would be so instrumental to all of us, impactful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. The deepest thanks to Steve Moore for making this happen. This started off, let's give him. It was his support that made this possible. And Dr. Rob and Bev, forgive me, I'm not seeing you. Again, deepest thanks to them for supporting this. This started off as an idea that several of us have had, several of us participated in, the celebration of what is the legacy and the heritage of faith together. And what's the highlight of this trip really is the community. What you saw in these pictures, which the pictures simply cannot convey, is what it is to hang out with John Wesley Fellows, to spend time on the bus, to spend time talking at dinners, to go to the sites and the places that are marked by the fellowship of the saints. So I lead some trips with my university, and the highlight is always, our focus in New Testament is to share scripture, to go to the places into which and out of which these texts were written. And so that when folks are there, the text comes alive. And so it was so with this trip, it was planned around the cities of the 7 ecumenical councils, with, of course, Nicaea being there at the center. So we started off in Istanbul, flew into Istanbul, and we did visit Hagia Sophia, where likely the 5th and 6th councils were held. We went over to Hagia Irene, a little church, where the very likely the location, not the building, but the location in which the first council was hosted. Second council. Thank you. The second council was hosted. Then we made our way out to modern-day Iznik, which is Nicaea. This is the place that was Constantine's summer home. And so this becomes the location where he will move what is the first ecumenical council. What you saw in the video with the singing, we had exclusive access that is no longer available to go out to the shore, where a basilica that is currently now with a receding lake has been revealed, and they've built a whole structure now. So if you go, you'll walk out on a platform. We were privileged to go. We were hosted by the archaeologist, Mustafa Shahin, who has excavated it. And so come with me to a trip, and I'll get you some exclusive access. We had similar when we went to Izmir. In the Agora of Smyrna, there's a section where there's this graffiti that is exclusive access, and we had, again, the privilege of going in there. This time, surprising, they just let us in. The tour company we work with have these connections, and so I was unaccompanied, how should I say it? Chaperone. That's exactly right. For the first time, probably the only time ever. We're not supposed to take pictures in there. And so if anybody got some bootleg pictures, this would have been the opportunity because we were unchaperoned. So remarkable experiences we had. We went to Nicaea. We also then made our way to Ephesus. We came inland a bit, so you saw Hierapolis with the beautiful travertines. Again, the pictures, I encourage you to Google it. Look up Hierapolis travertines, or in modern Turkish, Pamukkale, cotton castle, because it looks like a cotton candy. It's beautiful. And as you notice, we also went to the mound that is currently Colossae, that this year has begun excavations. So the reunion tour, my friends, we will go and take new pictures to see the progress there. And we also did a last-minute change that was accommodated. I had a kind of passion project city, but the museum was closed, and so we were allowed to shift to what, again, became one of the highlight experiences of the trip. So we went from a city that isn't necessarily having a biblical connection to one that does, to Pergamon, and then we took the tram up to the top there to the Acropolis. So we got to experience some remarkable things as a community. And then you saw we had some guest speakers. Tom McCall came and gave us some theological insight. Our very own Ted Campbell was our resident historian. And we also had the privilege of having a trip chaplain with Charles Harrell. And so I'd like to hear from him a bit. He has remarkable insights, not only across history, but also in relation to the sacred architecture that we got to experience. So Charles, introduce the trip a bit and let us think about what it is to be in the places.
It was absolutely remarkable experience. I'll say a little bit more about that in just a second. But I wanted to share a story that goes to a little bit of the why of do this, because you can Google everything. You can see wonderful pictures, and oftentimes you can see pictures taken from drones or other things that have a particular angle that maybe you wouldn't even get in life. And that's all true in our day and age. When I was doing my graduate work here at Duke, we had to have an inside minor, meaning in the religion department, and an outside minor. My outside minor was art history. And Annabelle Wharton, expert on Byzantine art, was my outside minor committee member. And I did the fourth chapter of my dissertation, which was on the cult of St. Basil and the rise of that, had to do with the iconography of St. Basil. So one day I was talking to Anne and I said, I see the drawings and I get an idea of where things were placed in the churches, but tell me, how do you really get a feel for it without actually going to all of these different places? The presupposition being it's absolutely impossible to go to all these different places. And I knew that she was well traveled, but also knew all the tricks of the trade. And I expected her to give me some, scholarly insight as to how to do this without actually going. She said, you can't. You have to go and see it. Oh. And then she said, you really should think about applying for a dissertation travel grant, which is something that Duke offered. And so she said, I'll write a letter for you. Okay. So I put in for it, and I got an email a couple of days later from my chairman, Bob Gregg, who said, I wrote your letter. You should get the loot. And so that's exactly how he put it. And I did. And I went, and there's nothing like actually being in the place. I wish actually that all of our ordinands in the church could go and visit some of these places and get a feel for it. Just a fabulous experience. I got to really say something about David as our tour host. Just absolutely magnificent. We were in Pergamum, for instance, and in the 7 letters in Revelation, it talks about the place where Satan's throne was. And we visited a temple site that probably John was referring to physically. And we could see, oh, yeah, that would have been the throne of Satan. We went into St. John's, the ruins of St. John's Basilica in Ephesus, which was a model. It was both modeled on and a model for other basilicas, martyr sites. And just to be at the place where the remains of St. John the Apostle were originally interred. They're no longer there. They were stolen and taken to Bari. And later we were earlier, we were at the tomb of St. Philip. And to be at these places and to experience them in situ was marvelous. Also, I wanted to say just a bit about the spirit in our travels between when we were on the bus, going from place to place. We had devotions in the morning. That was part of my joyful responsibility. And we shared reflections on the Psalms from St. Basil. We sang Charles Wesley hymns as we traveled across Turkey, which was really cool, and reflected a bit on the sites. but I wish that I could convey to you the just invitational spirit on that bus. Ted Campbell usually sat near the front, and David was right at the front every day on the bus. And we would get into these conversations, and Ted would say something like, so and so, like, Michael, you know something about this. Come on up here and talk to us. And people just came and shared, and it was a wonderful fellowship together. We got to geek out in a way that was not only delightful, but to share, in my case, with my wife, just an experience that was a fabulous collegial experience together, and in ways that we could all share. We heard from a variety of topics, but I've talked long enough. Let me pass off the mic.
One of the things that I would love to share about is just the impact that it's had on me as a fairly fresh in the classroom professor. It's really been only in the last 3 years that I've been teaching full time. And so to be able to go and stand in the sites where so much of the history of the church happened, it just has really given me a fresh passion for teaching church history. It's given me, it's a whole new level when I can look at my students and say, oh, but I've been to Hagia Sophia. I've been to where this church council was held, and here's what I saw. Here's what I experienced. And so it's made me rethink some of the text that I've been using, right? Because I have, as I've been teaching church history, I've always focused on the narrative, right? Because so many of our students, when they come into the classroom, they don't know the story. They don't know their own story, the story of the church. So I've focused very heavily on that. But visiting some of these sites has made me rethink, wait a minute, maybe I want to insert a text that really looks at some of the theology of what's happened in these places. So it really has been transformative just in terms of my teaching and shaping the way that I think about some of the events now that I've had boots on the ground, so to speak.
So I'd like to do two things here. I'd like to invite some others who were there to share a highlight, if you'd like to. We went to so many places and had so many experiences. And then the second thing is, let us think about what are the possibilities next. There's talk about now the next opportunity for John Wesley Fellows to go and experience our particular Wesleyan heritage history in England, to base out of Oxford. And so perhaps a year from this summer is the possibility. So think about that, again, with the generosity of the John Wesley Fellows community helping to support that kind of trip, and then being a part of that. And how can that help shape you? So I wonder, I'd be happy to bring the microphone to folks who were there, putting you all on the spot. Are there highlights? And it could be the experience. It could be something that if you were in the classroom, how has it helped you rethink or integrate your experience into what you share with your students? I'll come back to Jason.
This was an amazing trip. I'm so glad to have gotten to go. The thing that struck me was being at Ephesus, and you probably know from New Testament classes, Ephesus was a port city, and that's why it was wealthy, and that's why it mattered. But then the port silted in, and the city was eventually abandoned. So we were at the former tomb of St. Philip, and somebody said, you can see the water. It's 7 kilometers that way. Like, that's how much the land had moved, right? And I was just struck by being in a place that had once been entirely Christian, that's now nearly entirely not. I don't know what that means, but it felt like the land moving was like, the water receding was like the faith receding in that place. But also, God doesn't give up on places, and there are stories of amazing things happening in Anatolia. Who knows? Anyway, thank you.
Again, thank you for making this possible. What a rare and life-changing time. One highlight was being in Chalcedon and knowing the creeds and the definitive decisions made at Chalcedon and that whole Christian legacy. And to actually, unlike Nicaea, where there's no Christian churches left, in Chalcedon there is. And we met Father Nicholas, is that his name? And he welcomed us to his church. The ancient icons were there, and he gave us a tour. I gave him a pocket Jesus that I carry around. He received it in both hands and loved it. We had cultural exchanges, I guess. But to realize that we were in a legacy church with about 100 families. And these 100 families were in, I guess, a monastery chapel now. The original Church of Chalcedon is no longer there, location we saw. But to be in a legacy church where I guess there is an uninterrupted tradition of Christianity in Chalcedon, and contrasting that with Nicaea, where, where are the Christians? It was kind of amazing. That was one highlight. A second, I guess, is being in Ephesus and walking down that main street of Ephesus past the gate of Hermes, across the street to the temple of Aphrodite, was it? The goddess? And seeing, imagining where Paul may have had his tent-making shop on the right-hand side. I mean, it's all very condensed. It's all walkable. And then being able to, let's say, walk from Paul's tent-making shop to John's house where he took care of Mary, and then Hermes is waving to us, and the goddess is saying, hey, I'm the most important person in this city, and then going to the church of St. Mary saying, oh no, we got Mary, Christians have Mary, very powerful church. That was surreal. And finally, being on the bus, you reminded me this morning with Sonia, who was a musician with us. Sonia, who has a great voice, and I got together. We collaborated and wrote a new hymn by Charles Wesley. I'm not going to sing it. A new hymn by Charles Wesley with the help of AI. AI on the bus helped us write a new hymn of Charles Wesley that we sang and read together. That was a highlight.
Thank you so much. And it's very inspirational. We apparently inspired Pope Leo as well to go visit after we had gone. So, others? So let's take a moment to think about the possibilities here of going to visit, of enjoying together again as a community, and what might come out from that. What are the opportunities we have as a community here to celebrate that kind of travel together? What are you dreaming of?
I think like most of you, well, maybe many of you, have been on a Wesley trip to England in some way or another. And often those trips focus on key sites of John Wesley's life, right? You go to these important sites. But what strikes me as different than ancient tours is that in those tours, you're visiting like actual places of worship, right? The current or contemporary versions. And I think what could be maybe more interesting for us is to view the lens of Wesleyan thought through what is happening on the ground now. Like particularly, no one goes to Wales, for example, and Wales is like a very important place for evangelical Methodism in the early days. Things like that strike me as what would it look like to go outside of kind of the commemorative sites of John Wesley and instead focus on the lay sites. Bristol is another one that feels really important in that list. And so I wonder if we can expand our imagination to think about the British Methodist movement as a lay movement among mostly poor people, and how do we look at that beyond our founder? So.
That's a great idea.
Let me also make sure I draw attention. Special thanks to Carrie. Carrie was, as she always is, instrumental in the background. And of course, Carrie commissioned the video. So we're always grateful for what you did. And wonderful to have her. We got her out of her comfort zone, drawing her on the trip. And I think she, well, I can let her share if she wants to about what her experience was. And I'd like to distance myself from the her encouragement of shot callers for so while that may have come out of the Turkey trip to rally the troops, it wasn't part of the program.
What's the backstory? What do you show the backstory?
We talked a lot and we stood a lot, but we need to walk and talk at the same time, right? We can see twice as much, right? That doesn't matter. So, no, just real quick. Jason, did you have anything to say? We'd love your input too. Oh, did you? Okay. Okay.
On the dreaming thing, I actually think like a Luther trip in what's now, the former Eastern Germany. And part of what's cool about the former East Germany is there's still people living who pastored under communism, and there's some living memory of that. Those stories are really amazing. I also think a civil rights pilgrimage would be really good in terms of the generation that's still living that can tell those stories a little closer to home. So those are the two dreams I have.
One thing, the board heard about this and we get explained, and they were ecstatic about the outcome of it. So obviously, David, the first one is always the hardest. And bring to me your ideas and these dreams, because we can present them. And like Steve presented the England thing, they loved that idea. So you just have to bring it. This is just kind of like the collaborative grant, the international travel thing. These are things that we can keep doing at AFTE if you bring them to me.
Yeah, I want to see if I can piggyback on two of those. First of all, on Allie's talking about being there. So when we were studying at Durham, up north of England, right there near the Scottish border, and I preached one day in a little church there, and the pastor says, "Would you like to go see the oldest Methodist church in the world?" I was like, "Absolutely." So we get in the car and we go past the sheep field, through the sheep field, by the sheep field, and then into sheep field is the oldest Methodist church in the world, according to the pastor in Hexham. Tom will correct me here in a minute. But along the way, we passed all of these former Methodist preaching houses that are now homes. And when we got out there, so there's an oak tree with a plaque underneath that John Wesley preached here, a little stone church. And this was 2014. And he said, 7 little old ladies keep this open because of the nostalgia of the museum. There's nobody that lives there anymore because it was a lead mine. And you can imagine the needs of a lead mine, but now those needs have moved on, kind of like the port, the harbor is different now. So I wonder if we could think about even some of those missional centers in the northeast of England that were important, that we might look at how the church is living out that in the context today. About the civil rights tour, I would encourage you, I would love to have some conversations about that. So y'all and I have talked a little bit about this. So living where I live, near Mobile, Alabama, and a few years ago, they located the last ship to bring enslaved people into the United States. They ran a blockade after it was outlawed. They offloaded the people that they had brought from present-day Benin, and then sold them into the area and then blew up the ship. They found it. The Smithsonian's interested, all this sort of thing. They're talking about a place where they might recognize this and what are they going to do with the boat. But it's brought into context in southern Alabama. What do you do when you have the descendants of those who were enslaved on that ship and the descendants of the people who owned the ship all living in the same community? And I've been a part of some racial reconciliation conversations in that community, but those are kind of petered out a little bit. We could talk more about that. But if we wanted to think about maybe Birmingham and Montgomery, I would also invite you to come down where we are, where you can see this site from the front door of my church. And we could maybe be in ground zero to have some of those conversations as part of that too. So thanks.
Wonderful. I'll come over there. I will joke with you. I continually said no to Steve on this. And I said, I don't even have a suitcase. I don't have a passport. Are you kidding me? So I bought the suitcase and I left the tag on it because by golly, I was going to return that suitcase because I was not going back. I took the tag off, so I'm ready to go again.
Thank you. I'd like to piggyback on Jason's suggestion. Talking about the Lutheran heritage, the Reformation heritage, absolutely. What about the heritage of Pietism, which impacted Wesley and Methodism, and also through the Evangelicals and United Brethren? That's what gave rise to so much of the heart of who we are. So there are, tracing the footsteps of Christian David and the Otterbeins and the Children's Revival and all of this. So that's just another piggyback kind of suggestion for that part of the world.
I don't know if I can slide out and stand up, but I think, and this is very different than a Wesleyan Methodist Lutheran trip, but to go and explore some of the roots of church history in Ethiopia and Eritrea and to go see the rock-hewn churches would really, that's what my dissertation is on, so that it would also just help me. But I think, two birds, one stone kind of thing. But I have some connections with my supervisor and other people who have lived in those sites and still worship in some of those sites. And so I think it would be a unique opportunity that outside of something like the fellowship coming together would be difficult for individuals to experience, but maybe as a group we could experience that as well.
Okay, one more, and then we're going to move on. And keep in mind that, like I said, we're going to have a breakout session during lunch. So join this group and kind of brainstorm.
I think all these ideas are awesome. And I'm excited to, whatever comes next, I'm excited to participate. But I would want to make sure that we remember that we have a large global, worldwide Wesleyan family. And so when we're talking about the former communist countries, we have Estonia. There's a lively Methodist church in Estonia, in Romania, in Hungary. There are Methodist iterations in many of these countries. There's in England itself. There's many Methodist iterations, even in England where we all started. So I would just encourage us as we think about these trips that we remember that we are part of a very large worldwide family, and to be able to make contact and incorporate relationships with our brothers and sisters in those places wherever we go, I think would be very valuable and would go a long way in terms of our relationship and our commitment to connection and all of those things. So I just would just keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay, Paul, I'm coming to you, and Scott, we're going to have you next. So we'll move on to that. Yeah, absolutely.
This involves money. Unfortunately, our major donor left this morning. I wanted to tell you why we do not have a recording of this session. Carrie and I tried to get, Paul Casper, who, as you know, has taped for free almost every session we've had. His wife is very ill, and I hope we will remember her in our prayers. But what this comes to is communication. I'm assuming you're going to give a written report or something, but this is what our donors need, particularly our major donor. The board can obviously decide what they want to do with the money they get, but we have to have donors. In some way, this involves y'all. You're at the age now that you know some people, or you yourself may be able to give $100 or $500 or something. But we have size now, and that will grow. But what I'm saying is, I want you to remember Casper and his wife in your prayers. He promised he'll be with us next time, but we will have no recording to be able to show people. So it's in yours. A report would be very important.
Great points. Thank you so much for that. And keep in mind, like I said, applause. That's awesome.
So let me just pick up, and I want to thank David McCabe again, because really he was the guy that helped orchestrate a lot of this. And the advantage is David has led trips from his university. Many of you probably know that for 45 years straight, students in undergraduate institutions report that the number one most impactful learning experience they have in university is either an international study trip or an international mission trip. The number one thing, 45 straight years. The reality is that's true of all of us as well. When we have those experiences, it anchors us in ways that are so unimaginable. It just takes some imagination and some recognition. And I just want to echo what Paul said, because as we got into this, we realized that there were people that wanted to go, and some of the AFTE board members stepped up and provided scholarship help. There were board members at a couple of institutions, at Asbury in particular, that stepped up and provided some scholarship help to subsidize what AFTE was already subsidizing. So that's the way that these kind of things, and as I said to David and Carrie several times, we've got a beta test. We got to do one of these in order to learn what we don't know, and how do we pull these things off. So we know now we've got invitations. You talk about the racial reconciliation trip. There's a group that we've worked with called Arabon. I don't know how many of you know Arabon. David Bailey directs that. It's a great group. They have now got that trip down. They would love to do a trip with AFTE. So all it takes is a couple of you saying, we'll give it leadership and we'll help build that. Same thing, we've got interest in the Holy Land. We've got interest, as we've talked about, in Great Britain. But a Reformation trip would be so fantastic. An Ethiopian trip, that'd be incredible. Let's do some things like that. We need to get it on calendar, begin to think and plan in those kind of directions. So it's a very exciting kind of thing for the future.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to move on. The next little breakout is Scott Kisker. And as you know, on our website, we have applications for international teaching grants and collaborative research grants. So these are the two that we're going to hit on a little bit right now. And I encourage you to look at the application, be creative on this too. And it's a great experience, as I'm going to have Scott talk about his recent trip. So I know Segbignon talked about his a little bit too. So there's a lot that you can reach out to and get their experience on too.
Yeah, so I won't be like Debbie Downer here today. I get to just be super up and positive. Yesterday I talked about the fields are white unto the harvest, but the laborers are few. And the desperate need around the world for people to be grounded deeply in the Christian faith. This grant opportunity provides a means by which we, AFTE fellows, can go and actually pour into folks who are on the ground, planting churches, doing the thing, right? And so this past summer I got to do a teaching in Istanbul with Sergei Nikolaev as my translator, teaching 26 students from Moscow Seminary, virtually, though Sergei was with me, so we were in person, and Wesleyan missiology. So I started out my teaching career as an evangelist professor, and it was amazing on two accounts. So one of the things about traveling and doing these kinds of things, I've done a number of them. I've taught in Istanbul, I've taught in Moscow, I've taught in Voronezh, I've taught in Kyrgyzstan, I've taught in Vietnam, and many of these were through the grants that were provided by AFTE to resource the churches that are, like I said, doing this. It's many of you have done similar things. I know Doug has been to Kyrgyzstan and Doug Strong, but you not only are there in the place that you see where church history happened like you do on these tours, but you're actually also touching the lives of the people who are doing the work right now in those places. So, for example, in Kyrgyzstan, you're training folks who are going out and leading class meetings and planting churches all throughout this it was the most foreign place I had ever been. You know, I'll tell a little quick story, but and also you get to go see where the church has been. You can go to these sites where you're seeing Nestorian crosses. You're seeing all kinds of ways in which the church has and the Spirit of God has driven people to these places to bring the gospel long before you ever got there. And this summer, I was there in Istanbul, and then on Trinity Sunday, I was there over Trinity Sunday. Sergey and I rented a car, and we went to Nicaea. And so I wasn't on y'all's trip, but I got to go to Nicaea on Trinity Sunday. And like other people have said, Sergey and I proclaimed the Nicene Creed as the call to prayer is going on in the background. And you just, as a church historian, like Christine said, you get a sense of, oh, this is a resort, right? Constantine is like bringing all, this is a trip to Aspen. He's got his house in Aspen, and he's bringing all these people, these kind of grumpy kind of Christians, like I know well, together who like to disagree, and he's trying to get them to agree on something. So he's giving them this all-inclusive resort experience, and then, Nicholas punches Arius in the mouth, and things go awry. But I just want to encourage you as you see opportunities and seek opportunities. This provides an amazing way in which you can apply. There's a grant application. It's right there on the website, and I taught from June 9th to June 14th, and then on Sunday we went to Nicaea. And it's it is intensive. You're teaching from probably 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, in translation. But you're, at least if you're in Istanbul, you're in an incredibly spectacular place. Like, why wouldn't you move the capital from Rome? Have you ever been to Rome in the summer? You definitely would rather move the capital to Constantinople, to Istanbul. So, and then you provide a report of what you did, your syllabus. I've taught, like I said, Wesleyan discipleship different times. I've taught Wesleyan missiology, obviously, but the needs are vast, and the hunger for you all to pour into folks who are on the ground, who don't have the resources or access to the scholars. It's just a privilege, and it connects both what God has done, what God is doing, and you get to be a part of what God will do through these efforts. So, anyway. Well, let me see if I can pull this up. Not that. That's just the report. Let's see. I don't know how to do it. Anyway, I was going to. Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, it was great. It was great. So, any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a question, but a couple of observations. One, as a teacher, the opportunity to teach internationally when it's not your mother tongue is a great opportunity to be challenged to determine what's most important, because you've got less time. And so you really have to go back to the basics, and that's very important. The other thing that I don't know if you encountered this for your topic, but I know Justice and I did, is good theology resources are very scarce in Russia, and there's virtually nothing from the Wesleyan tradition in that vein. And it would be one of those things that, in addition to the traveling to do teaching, to think about what language-based resources are available in that other place would be very important. The church is far less well resourced, especially with Wesleyan and Methodist tradition materials.
And also that what that means is your gifts as a scholar are, the fact that you've had the resources and can now just through yourself be bringing what they don't have access to. It's an incredible privilege.
I don't know if we touched on it, but again, the applications are online and it's a pretty simple process. I mean, going through it and being reimbursed and everything. Would you agree? Was I too hard on you?
No,
The
it was
people
not
that
too
have
hard on me.
Done grants.
And you'll have, you need usually your institution will be the one to be the financial, whatever, pass through thing. And I don't know what it is, but if you have they will reimburse them. You can use, if there's a delay, so to speak, AFTE will reimburse your institution. You can use your institution's card to put some of your stuff on. By the time it comes through, you don't have to touch anything, basically. Like all of it just flows right through from your account with the school back to the school. So it even becomes, at least for me, it became really easy.
So my question is there like a bank of people that AFTE works with internationally? Or would I bring a friend who is a network leader in Jordan who's pastoring Free Methodist churches who would like training and go, this is an idea?
I'm going to pass that back to Carrie, but I think they're open to partnerships with all sorts of different folks. I mean, obviously within our broader Wesleyan world, but yeah. Kim?
Joshua, to your point, World Evangelism has an entire network of people globally within the Wesleyan family and can easily make contacts for if you have ideas about trips. So we can easily handle that.
But there are existing partnerships, and there are, if you have ideas, it's all the above. So you got one that works right.
And just to reiterate what's online and some of the themes that have been shared. So it is like you can have a relationship. A relationship can be found if you have a topic. I mean, it's sort of a puzzle piece. I've seen it, over many years, and I think it's wonderful. And just so this is a part that's on the website to highlight, since we're all in the same room, you can bring a currently funded fellow or a junior scholar. Or a junior scholar currently funded fellow could find a senior fellow and then to partner together, or even a small group, a cohort. And that has been really meaningful as well. So there's just all sorts of opportunities in terms of your imagination. Take your mentor. There. That was a
good idea. That was really good. Really good. Excuse me.
Scott, you mentioned your home institution and being sort of the venue through which all of the finances go through. What if one does not have an institution?
I'm gonna ask Carrie to answer that question. I don't know.
You just submit it to me and we get it done. We'll work through you. And that's fine too. I mean, normally what happens is you pay for it, and within a day, once you submitted your expense report, I can get the funds out. So yeah.
And the way that I did it is I put it all on a credit card, and all of that is immediately changed into dollars. So you can actually submit your credit card report is what I did. I had the receipts as well, but they were all in Turkish, so I didn't really know what they all said. But you can also, if you do it that way, AFTE can see exactly, match up the receipts with what it actually costs for the hotel and the food and all of that.
So at first it's your own. We can work with you. I can work with
you.
They'll work.
And I would just add to kind of a combination of the two opportunities that we've been talking about this morning with international travel, but also the opportunity to teach in some of these places. I know I'm a recipient of one of these travel grants and getting to go to Fiji in 2024. But there's other opportunities with World Methodist Evangelism. Just in this year, we're going to Cuba, Indonesia, hopefully a country in Africa, and Uruguay. And we would love to have you come and be a part. There's not always necessarily an opportunity for teaching, But we want to invite you to come to be a part of those trips to see how the Lord is still using the people called Methodists all around the world. And so we have a lot of opportunities rolling out every year. We'll try to do a better job of communicating that to you so you can come be a part. But there also may be some teaching opportunities where we can collaborate or work together in different areas. So just really excited about that. And one of the things that we're doing with World Methodist Evangelism this year, we have a prayer time every week, and we are highlighting a different Methodist church or part of our Wesleyan Methodist family around the world every week. And so we encourage you to pray with us on Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock on Facebook. Kim leads the prayer most of the time. We've been praying for Argentina and Bolivia the past couple of weeks. And so you'll get to learn more about our family if you're able to tune in, as there's a lot of us around the world. So it's pretty exciting to be a part. So thank you.
We have, this isn't just a given. We do have committees for each of these grants. And so when you submit your proposal, I submit it to the committee. And a lot of times they do get sent back to me, and you have to fill out a little bit more detail or explanation on your intent. But the committee is really good to work with the different committees for this. And so that's the process it goes through. It goes to me, the committee, they review it, and then I'll get back to you on it. So thank you for this.
Sure.
I so appreciate it. We're going to move on. If you remember last year at Lanier, Doug presented a wonderful presentation on his idea. What was your title again last year?
Well, I call it the Big Tent, but now we're calling it Wesleyan Option.
Yep. Yeah. It was the Big Tent. Thank you for reminding me. And so those that really were ignited by his talk have gotten together multiple times and have something great to share with you. So I'm excited. This is more of a collaborative research program that they want to share with you. And after this, we'll have lunch, hopefully. I don't know where my caterers are. We might be going to Chick-fil-A. But yes, welcome, Doug, and your team here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. What a richness we're hearing about the global reach of our tradition. I also would say that we're at a place of maturity as a fellowship that is what inspires what we're thinking about, which is we now have arguably the best collection of Wesleyan scholars there are. I mean, I really don't want to overstate that, but I think there's some truth to that. When I was at Oxford Institute for Methodist Theological Studies, which is the global gathering, this fellowship shined, right? Because there were so many of us there representing the best of scholarship. And by the way, a little promo ad, the Wesleyan Theological Society is meeting at Seattle Pacific in just a few weeks in March. So I encourage you to come, and where you'll see more of that. But what's missing with this richness globally and with scholarship is a public face. And my argument is that our Reformed brothers and sisters have done a way better job of publicizing and marketing themselves than we have. And we have an opportunity because to make an accessible Wesleyan message. That's what I'm hoping for. Something that which we might call the Wesleyan option, because we're not the only game in town theologically. We're not. We don't think that others are. A wonderful thing about being Wesleyan is that we believe in the Catholic spirit. We really do embrace other traditions, but we still believe that a message of universal grace and of Christian perfection is something worth talking about, right? And that people really want to hear it, and young people are excited by it when they do hear it really expressed in a way that they can understand. And that's what I would like to do. I've been thinking about public theology. That is, what times when theology's made a difference in articulation. I think at this time in our nation's history, we need a strong public theology. The last time this was really rich was maybe the middle of the 20th century, and two leading public theologians were Reinhold Niebuhr and E. Stanley Jones. And they had very, very different perspectives, right? Niebuhr's coming from this reformed, almost cynical. He says he admits that in Moral Man and Immoral Society. Meanwhile, E. Stanley Jones was accused of being utopian and sentimentalist. Meanwhile, though, they're having this dialogue with each other over and over again, an extended dialogue publicly and privately. And they respected each other. And there's a way in which that kind of rigorousness, which really informed. So both Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama depended on those sources and that dialogue, by the way, in their own, and many, many other political figures. I'm saying it makes a difference. We can make a difference in the conversations. A question arises. So this is a summary of what I said last year, very briefly. How can people be reached with an articulation that's compelling, relevant? What's the content of what's the content of the Wesleys that is relevant and made it popular then? Well, you can read this. I'll send this out so that you can see it. I'm not going to spend time with it. And what is it about Gen Z that are looking for? Well, all this, there's a summary statements of, I'm sure you've all seen these various studies that have been done. This is kind of my summary of the studies, of that fervent expression of experiential faith, formed intellectually, thinking critically, a sense of community, making a difference in the world through social change. But in Gen Z, it's not just any social change, it's in local communities, right? Where you actually live, holding together diverse perspectives and a faith that connects them to the ancient creedal Christianity, which we've heard so much just recently about how those that are interested in faith are interested in liturgical creedal expressions of that, right? Yeah. And what is it about our own Wesleyan theology that is particularly appropriate? Well, I just took those ideas that what Gen Z is interested in and matched them with the foci of Wesley's theology. And I'm not going to take the time for that because I want us to get to our panel. So this is my contention. What is needed is a fresh, sustained articulation of Wesleyan theology and praxis, a popularly accessible version. And this is what I know some of you have worked on this, so I'm not accusing any of us of not trying, but we've not done it together. Okay? We've not done this together. So expressed through books, blogs, podcasts, Substack, everything. The plethora of online resources. An intellectual hub that provides space for collaborative conversation and community of Wesleyans of all stripes. And now this fellowship is broader than just one denomination, so we have that opportunity. It's actually a privilege now that we can do that. And so we had a group that kind of grew out of this conversation from last year, and we've been meeting. It's actually larger than us, but a few of us are here. And Lane, I want you to just say a word, and then we're going to talk together.
Yeah, and I want to invite the panel if you'll come on back in. So yes.
Did we want to play this?
Let's leave it like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, that's what I'd like to do. Yeah. Let's see if it
should we. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm standing in the sanctuary of the church that I pastor, and I'm sorry I had to leave early from our Christmas conference this year. It's always such a joy to see you all and to participate with you. But I had to get back to be here for worship on Sunday. So I'm recording this in advance of your Saturday afternoon session on the Wesleyan Option Plan. And I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth from a distance about the importance of what we're trying to do for the fellowship and through the fellowship with the Wesleyan Option. And so I'm hoping presentations that are made by our brothers and sisters you find really compelling, and we get on board with it. Obviously, I'm one of the older guys now in this fellowship, and we've thought about the identity and mission of the Foundation for Theological Education and for the John Wesley Fellows for a long time. A lot of things have changed in our church, in the world, and we've tried to modify to respond to those changes. But what's hitting me, and it's particularly relevant to this Wesleyan option, is we still have the basic mission, which is to help renew the church through theological education and other means, more creatively perhaps, not so conventional as we perhaps used to think, but still renewing the church through theological education. And I admit to you, at my age and in the circumstances that I face here in this community, I feel this as important, if not more so than ever. So as you think about participating in the Wesleyan option, as you think about what you can do where you serve, I hope we can really keep this mission in mind and realize that we have this tremendous opportunity to reach people, serious Christians, beyond the academy, who really want to grow in their faith and understand their faith more readily and more comprehensively. We have a really important role to play in this work, and so let's get to work and let's join together and let's make some really good videos and podcasts and other content that we can use then to help renew the church. God bless you as you think about this and think about how you might get involved.
So on your table, you will see a card in the middle of it. We have begun the first steps of this process. We have kicked off a podcast called The Wesleyan Option. The first episode went live yesterday morning, and we wanted to invite you to be some of the first that to download it. So you'll see QR codes there for Spotify and for Apple Podcasts. This is sort of our prototype. And we will hopefully be expanding this out to other platforms and things of that nature. But this should hit 90% of you if you are podcast listeners. And this actually is being recorded. We are recording this. This will be a podcast episode. So if you'd like to know how recording goes, it goes like this. Mark. Welcome to Wesleyan Option. I'm Lane Davis, and we are coming to you live from the John Wesley Fellows Conference on the campus of Duke Divinity School at Duke University. We've got Rob and Joy and our producer, Allie, and Doug Strong, who you heard about on our very first episode a few weeks ago as well. And we are excited to be recording this conversation with the whole John Wesley Fellowship. And I wanted to throw a first question to Joy as well. I wanted to ask you, Joy, Doug mentioned this in a presentation he gave a few minutes ago. Really, how would you characterize the state of public Wesleyan theology in the world today?
In many ways, it's great to be here again. Thank you. In many ways, I've had several questions raised to me by students, by lay people in congregations, by administrators and leaders at institutions, that when I ask what is needed, the question they say is, we need a program on public theology. That's the language that is being used right now. So one of the needs is that people are beginning to use that language and say, we need it. Entitling this the Wesleyan option admits the reality that the conversation has been had from Reformed voices. Many of the spaces that we hear, the podcasts that we hear, the writings that we hear are from a Reformed perspective. And we just haven't done that. We just haven't gotten into that space. And yet, if you think about it, economically, culturally, socially, politically, where we are right now in 2026 is very familiar to the reality in which John Wesley spoke and gave that first Wesleyan option that just took root and spread like a fire, if I can use that image. It's interesting if you think about the scriptural idea that there's nothing new under the sun, because what we are experiencing really is so familiar, and it's our time now. And in saying that it's our time, I literally mean that in terms of our generation, whether we're older or the younger members of the newer members, younger members of our fellowship. But I also mean that it's our time as Wesleyans to re-enter the conversation, not just from the academic standpoint, not just from the doctrinal standpoint, but from the lived experiences that took John Wesley out of the academy and out of the pulpit onto the streets to talk to everyday people in everyday language. That vile exercise that he thought, if we think that this podcast Substat thing might be a little less than what we wanted to do as academics, shame on us. Because the reality is everything that we do in the academy is really for the folks that are turning on their podcasts and listening right now. And so as I'm looking at you, but speaking into their ears, it's a recognition that if you really want to understand this thing called grace, this reality of the presence of the Creator God made known in Jesus Christ, that it's not just something that's in our minds, but that we can experience it and that we can use language to describe it. And our efforts in this particular conversation is to make that a reality among 21st century listeners who are saying, is there a God? Does this God care? Is there anyone who has an experience? And we're not just saying, well, there was this guy called John Wesley way back then. We're saying we are heirs of John Wesley. And let me tell you about how we can be a voice in our present context, not a voice in the sanctuary of buildings we've built, but a voice in the sanctuary of the world that the Creator God has built. And that means in the pubs, that means at the gas station, that means in the big box stores, that means when you're walking through a park or doing your morning run, and someone says to you, can you give an account for the faith that you have? And you can say, yeah, but it's not in this hierarchy that you've heard. It's actually in the sense of a God who has been seeking you. And the very fact that you're asking this question now is a response to God's love for you. And if you want me to keep going, I will. I would. That was an answer to that strange person I was talking to right now, but I am going to hand the mic off.
Allie, I want to kind of ask the same question to you. So Allie, by the way, is our producer. She does behind the scenes. We don't let her out of the room very often to talk, but we have done it today. Allie, you're in a local church, and so I'm just kind of curious about your sense of how your laity particularly are engaging a type of public Wesleyan theology. I know in my experience in the local church, there are always members of the church where I have thought you would love theological education, and it just has not necessarily always been offered, right, in a way that could be available to those. So I'm just curious about your experiences, how you see things happening in the world today.
Yeah, I want to make 2 points. I think the first one is that I don't think most people in the local church, even in what we call Methodist or Wesleyan churches, know that they're Wesleyan. And that's, I think, the first problem is identifying. I think there's an opportunity now in the Wesleyan, pan-Wesleyan movement. And now that we've kind of broken out of some institutional barriers, to embrace an almost anti-institutional attitude, which secret, that's how we started. We were not meant to be an institution. And so now we have the opportunity to think of ourselves as a Wesleyan movement that works among several institutions and several places instead of a kind of institutional barrier. And this is nowhere more true than the local church, right? No matter the denomination that you fall under, if there is a denomination, you can be Wesleyan, I think. And so having a name for that and then being able to take Wesleyan education into those places beyond the small group model, I think, is something that I hope for in the future, because I do think people are craving it, right? They want that sense of Christian identity, and more than anything, they want language around that stuff. And that's actually what I think we can provide, maybe better than anything else. We speak in academia our own language, and it is a difficult language to learn. But if we're able to take that language and simplify it and make it teachable and accessible, there are people who will listen. And in the local church, as much as bemoaning as we give about the local church and its status, blah, 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 there are still people coming to church and people who are seeking that out. And I think that public theology that has an articulated stance is possible. And I do think we can join that conversation. And the second thing I want to remind about public theology, and this is the historian in me, so much when we think about the early movement, we associate it with printed sermons. And that's because we're studying it now, and that's the sources that we have. But in reality, the way that Methodism worked in the British movement was not through printed sources. It was through letters, and it was through magazines, and it was through ads, and it was these little tracts that they handed out, and it was through class tickets. It was essentially like the print culture that made it possible. And we have isolated ourselves a little bit from that daily activity of how do we get the word out. And I think podcast is just the beginning of how we start that movement. But we are relying on you all who have so many other formats that you do this work in to be able to kind of go back to that source of how do we create our own Wesleyan print culture in the 21st century.
It's my wife texting pictures of my kids, by the way. We can show those later. Rob, I want to come to you a little bit. I want to talk about this this sort of revival that seems to be in the air a bit. If you sort of follow religious news and things of that nature, there's sort of this sense that perhaps we're at the beginnings of a 21st century revival. Now, I will sort of lay my cards on the table and say I want further data. I want further proof of this. I'm still a little skeptical. But here's my question for you, because what's interesting to me about this particular moment is where we see the most sort of re-engagement with church, or at least in a lot of public ways, are in more ancient liturgical places. Eastern Orthodoxy, Roman Catholicism have both sort of blown up with baptisms recently. I'm curious because Methodism exploded in a previous century on the camp meeting and the revival. So what does this mean for us? What is Wesleyans? Where is our position in this? I'm just curious what your experience is, what you're seeing, and what you think the future might hold.
Yeah, thanks. So it's interesting how all those different practices can be revival, right? Whether it be the ancient, whether it be the camp meetings, whether it be in a place with skinny jeans and smoke machines. Revival can happen in all those places. What's important to me as a practitioner and a scholar is not just the practice, but we have to get down lower than that, because I'm convinced that we must do good theology in these, because theology shapes motivations and motivations shape actions. So rather than just say, oh, that practice is correct or that, worship style is better, let's help people do good theology in those spaces. And in a world in which our culture is so weary of fighting about things, and we're in a space where we just feel like everyone wants to fight with you, why don't we come and listen to one another in that way that we know, where we can work out our salvation and holiness in our context. And when I think about what motivates me in this, I can do that in 3 quick stories when we talk about how to meet this revival. One is I think about a gentleman that I met on an airplane a few months ago. I invited him to coffee. We had coffee together in my town. And then he learned that I'm a pastor. And that opened up a really interesting conversation. But, he's of the millennial generation. He's going through a divorce and he's trying to figure out how to raise his kids in the space he never expected to be. He comes to church. He texts me afterwards and he says, it reminds me of what it was like when I was in middle school and high school. There are folks who have had an exposure to the church and now they're looking to answers to questions of life. And we know that we have that in Jesus Christ. And so can we help folks in our local context, or like my friend for coffee, do good theology as they do this? The second is one of our small groups that we lead at our church. We've encouraged people to make a practice of reading the Bible on a regular basis, and that'll lead to revival, certainly. A woman comes in, she's been in the church for decades, and she says, y'all have been reading my Bible just like you said. And we said, great. She goes, please tell me that this guy, Job, it's going to get better for him. And I said, what are you talking about, Sandra? She goes, I'm halfway through. This guy's a mess. Y'all, we laugh, but she's been in the church for decades and did not know what happened to Job at the end. We've got some things to do to teach our people not only how to read the Bible, to engage it, but as one of our colleagues said the other day when Warren said they need the tools as they read Scripture as well. And speaking of Scripture, I think of the third in which I got a reel on Instagram last week from two 20-somethings that I care about very, very much. And they sent this to me and they said, what do you think of this? How about this? This is an interesting point. And it was someone who was making the case, he was trying to make the case that because Jesus is tempted in the wilderness and refuses to take the powers that Satan offers him of all of the kingdoms, Christians should never be involved in leadership in government or in civil society. And it's just a clip. It's just a short little thing. But we need to give folks the theological tools on how to engage that, because there are a lot of problems. There's a lot of those scriptures that we can talk about how to use that. And so for me, if we're going to be a part of this revival, let's help people have the theological tools in that public space, no matter what the generation, whether that be the millennials who have walked away and maybe now are interested in coming back, the 20-somethings that are trying to figure out what's going on, or even the people that have been around for a long time but don't have necessarily the grounding that we had hoped we had given them along the way.
All right, so I'd like to kind of open it up now just for any comments that you all might have, and I would love to get your perspectives on this, on what you are seeing happening in the culture, on where the need is, on how we as a fellowship might meet it in the various ways that we might have. And so I'd like to open it up, and I'm going to unplug my iPad so that you can all friend me on LinkedIn, and we can have that conversation offline. Connect with you later, Josh. Let's go over here.
I just really want to applaud this enterprise, but I would like to point out what I think is a major omission in the effort: songwriting and lyricism. One of the distinctive contributions of Wesleyanism to Protestantism is the ability to express sound theology in lyrical form.
And accessible. It was.
And accessible, yeah. So, I've always wondered why Methodist schools don't have certificates and programs and extension programs to teach lyricism as a way of expressing Christian theology.
You want to respond to that, Joey?
I would.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Lester. And I should have known that you would jump on that. And I'm going to restate your question, because it is amazing that we have all of these Wesleyan schools and we don't have programs for contemporary music right now. And so the contemporary voice, the work that you've done, the contemporary voice of music that people have found accessible is a Reformed theology, and they don't know it. Or Pentecostal. And they don't know it. So two stories. One is it's a book, but I'll get to the arts in a minute. When Henry Blackaby wrote Experiencing God. Amazing reach. Everybody read that book. I was amazed to find out how many United Methodist congregations were reading that book. And every one of my churches, when they got to, I believe it was chapter 2, the people would come to me and they would always say, I don't understand it. I thought it was a great book. I don't understand what's going on. And in chapter 2, Blackaby is expressly reformed. We don't have our people aware enough of how to articulate their faith as a Wesleyan perspective to recognize why they didn't appreciate chapter 2. And I would just say it's a different theological perspective. I've got work to do from the pulpit. Keep reading. It's a great book. And they would, but then I would try to present that of that Wesleyan understanding. What's going through their minds is the music that has a more reformed theology. And so they're being told this, and many of you have watched your children. I know this happened to a lot of my other colleagues, watch their children go off to college and join a more reformed campus ministry because it was vibrant. Mm-hmm. Second story, I had a student who is in the arts field. He is doing movies, directing movies and things like that. And when he came to get his theological degree, it was an extra degree. He already had his MFA, SA, which was the terminal degree in arts. And I said to him, why are you getting a theological degree? And he said, because I want my faith to matter. So he knew he was going to be in the producing industry, but he didn't want to be successful without having the capacity of articulating his faith. We have folks that are going in, many who are coming out of the church, who are going into writing songs, becoming Grammy winners and things like that. And what is lost in their public faith, I'm going to say Beyonce, who came out of a Methodist church, if you didn't know that, in Houston. What is lost is the distinctive roots of her heritage, of her religious heritage, of her particularly Wesleyan heritage. I would also say that that is true for the lack of our using the songwriting, the music writing in how we express. So if we do this right, what people will have an opportunity is to hear what the Wesleyan voice sounds like and to see the need for exactly what you're asking for, Lester. How can my music that people are going to hear every day reflect what I now can articulate because I've been in this conversation?
And let me just tack onto that too. One of the real successes of Reformed theology has been that it has often been tied to particular times of music. You probably would not have heard of John Piper if it wasn't for Chris Tomlin, because they shared a stage originally.
Hey, thank you very much for this very important conversation. An anecdote that I've already shared with several people in the room, but it's still very fresh in my mind and relates to this. A smart young Harvard law student 3 years ago, Methodist from Texas, invited me to speak to his group at Harvard, which I gladly did. We stayed in contact, and he texted me 2 months ago. He's practicing law in Texas and attends a Global Methodist church, and he said he loves Stephen Wolf's The Case for Christian Nationalism because it offers a vision of the common good that Methodism does not. And I said, oh, I think you and I read different translations of the same book, because on page such and such, he advocates the government having the power to execute blasphemers and apostates, and I don't see that as the public good. He didn't respond to that, but this is not an isolated case. This is a real trend among intellectual, very smart, educated young Christian men who are looking for a vision, a Christian vision of the common good that Methodism or the Wesleyan perspective is not offering them. So please proceed with this project. And as I've also shared with several of you, my organization is talking to Asbury Seminary about creating a new initiative on Wesleyan political theology, and would love to have many of you involved if you're interested. Thank you.
Again, so supportive. This is much needed, and I'd echo Lester's
thing about music. I want to just throw something back to you, kind of more about the vision, something I wrestle with. And it seems to me one of the things that we didn't find a corollary with, Doug, on your screen, there's no subtext in this. Let me just preface it that way. The desire to flee from the wrath to come seems to be pretty important for the movement, too. Is there a corollary to that in our current moment? I'm going to let y'all answer.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, that list is not full. And what struck me in this reading that I've been doing of Niebuhr and Jones is that Jones, bless him, I love E. Stanley Jones, but he really is pretty utopian. And the whole emphasis which we heard as the long 20th century summary of Wesleyanism being the pessimism about human nature, but the optimism of God's grace. The pessimism kind of got dropped out. And so we do need to talk about that. The optimism of God's grace is amazing and continues to be amazing. And the pessimism of human nature, which Niebuhr helps us to, and reminds us of, is pervasive. And we can't minimize that. So, yeah. Joshua?
Just a super quick practical question. Do y'all have a target audience, and how are you going to capture Gen Z?
Yes and no. I think in general, the hope is that the platforms that we use, we need to experiment a little bit about what platforms we as creators can be most successful on, because I think that's a limitation. But I think the idea is that if we're able to kind of build momentum in both blog spaces and like written stuff, and then also videos and podcast, then perhaps we can start moving in some of the platforms that Gen Z uses. I think the short answer is yes, we want to reach younger audiences. B, younger audiences will come to you if you do good work.
I just want to see Doug on TikTok.
I will say, so we do have plans to do video and to move into YouTube and places like that. It is cheap to start a podcast. It's progressively more expensive to get good at it. So that's part of it.
Just piggybacking on that question, in terms of your audience, yes, Gen Z, I get the direction. And I think this is awesome. I think I absolutely 100% behind it. I'm just curious about the audience in terms of Christians that you've talked about two different groups during your presentation. Yeah. Some that are existing Christians that we just haven't discipled well enough to know that they're Wesleyan, and we want to beef that up. That's an entirely different audience than, Joy, what you were kind of talking about, which is people need to who is God? People need to discover from the get-go. And how you are going to engage, those are two different kinds of audiences in which you would engage. And so I'm wondering, A, if you've talked about that. And then the second question I would have is, again, related to platform. I know you're using the existing platform, Spotify and all that, but are you interested in tapping into existing audiences that are pre-built already to know this? For instance, Josh mentioned the Facebook prayers. We have 2,500 people every week that are engaged in that. That's 2,500 people that this could reach, but yet we've not really talked about collaboration with existing audiences that are already there and ready to go. So that's basically what I'm interested in talking about.
I'll come back. Oh, sorry.
Brent, do you still have a question?
Yeah, Brent still has a question. I should go next.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not a question, just a quick observation. Yeah. That we need something that's not in the reform space, maybe a good point, but I don't know that it needs to be recorded.
Oh.
I don't know that it needs to be recorded.
What he wants to say.
That's it.
What doesn't need to be recorded? Clarify that again.
So, to say there's a space for a Wesleyan voice, and that the Reformed are really good at this, That's good thinking, and it's worth knowing that that might be a way to do this. I don't know that it needs to be the first thing people hear every time they turn into a podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
It's not.
It's not.
We've recorded about 4 or 5 episodes already. It's not. I promise. Yeah.
For this group,
Yeah.
we will say that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the interesting things about doing a live presentation, especially this early in a podcast, where we're actually part of your answer to you, Kim, is we're actually trying to get the buy-in first from among us, so that we can tap into the connections we already have, you already have. But as you can think of the first answer I gave that answer to you, and then I remembered that we were recording, and so shifted a little bit. And there are other recordings that we already have. And this might have to be bleeped out too, but we might take that line out just to be in that. One of the things I learned in a previous podcast that I was a part of, cut this out too, is the fact that we try real hard not to diss anybody. The difficulty of this is trying to speak to us is that, okay, now we can start recording again. So Kim, in answer to what you're saying, one of the interesting things that I experienced a few months was going to a conference for preaching to Gen Z. And it was really interesting to me because what they were asking for was for our generation to disciple them in what I would best describe as a class meeting, a Wesleyan class meeting. But they weren't Wesleyan, so that I heard the answer immediately for that group. And just repeating what Allie said, if we do good work, they will lean in. The statement I made in terms of folks that are asking who God is, I know I've been in and out of churches over the years, but there have been many church people that either I have preached as a guest preacher in, or led a recurring family camp with every year, or in congregations that I've served, that have been those people who have sat in a Bible study or read the Bible and will ask a basic question because to quote Scott Jones, I'm not going to quote him because it doesn't work. But the gist of it is our churches have become safe places for people to be in community, but they have not become distinctly places where people are formed as Christians. And so I think it's important for us to be attentive to, there are folks sitting in the pews who have been there for 60 years who can't admit publicly that they really don't understand who God is. And so it's a fair question for us to answer. I say this in my preaching classes. Preach to the person who's hearing the gospel for the first time, and someone who's been sitting there as long as your grandmother will hear a gospel they've never heard. That's how compelling this story is. And as a convert to the Wesleyan movement, I think that's how compelling the Wesleyan option is.
I think we have time for one more, and I know Wendy had her hand up, so let's.
I'd love to invite, or maybe push back against the idea, if you build something good, they'll come kind of idea. If you will invite young people with you in the process right now, not after you've created it, but today. You don't have to wait to create a TikTok account if you have young people who are already committed Wesleyans walking with you. You know, I have a 21-year-old I could hand over to you right now who is rip-roaring ready to go. You know, and I just finished reading Jeffrey Cuse's book on young adults from the Pacific Northwest Pivot Project. And one of the number one things that the young people in that book said is we don't want ministry done for us, but we don't want you to abandon us as we try to create it. We want our leadership utilized and used, and we want to be mentored in it. So don't abdicate the responsibility, but don't micromanage us. So, my invitation to you and encouragement to you would be like, please don't wait until after you've created all of the thing to pull in really excited, smart, intellectual, earnest, eager, tech savvy, charismatic young people who can join you right now today to do the work.
Amen.
So we thank you so much for beginning this conversation with us, and we'd like to continue it in that breakout session that we will have later. So if you'd like to hang on for that, we would love to continue. So, Carrie.
Thank you. Awesome. We found the food. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you all for participating in that. Show of hands real quick again. Who is traveling in the next 2 hours? Okay. Lane, Stephen. Okay. So maybe get together. You guys in the back, grab a shuttle together after you have your lunch or whenever it works out for you guys or whenever you want to leave. Who in your mind would like to talk more about the international travel experience? Anybody? And yeah, setting up, brainstorming, what we will be doing, and I'm trying to get a feel. We will go through the line, grab your lunch, and I will send you to various rooms to have lunch together and discuss and further talk about these things. Anyone want to do more on the traveling? Okay. Any Duke people want to, and the reason I'm asking, I need someone to guide me to let's do this. 0013 is going to be international travel, talking about that. So when I'm done in just a sec, I'm going to have you guys go through the line first, and then anyone that wants to talk about international teaching, okay, we'll follow Lester Ruth mentioned that he would like to go to, and discuss that more. So Scott, would you also follow Lester? And you guys will also eat first and take your plate and go downstairs. So no, collaborative grants will stay in here. And that I was very definite about that, wasn't I? No, sorry about that. Collaborative grants will stay in this room. So you will be the last to eat. Let everyone else go to their rooms, and then we'll have you follow through. Hopefully, we're kind of healthy today. We have kind of a baked potato / salad bar. So hopefully that is good for you all. And then we will come back here about 1 o'clock and we'll have our desserts and continue with our worship and closing items. So that's staying here. That is Wesleyan option is staying here. Am I halfway clear on all this? Yes, Lester.
Just to clarify.
Yes.
International travels in 0015.
Yes.
And international teachings in 0013.
Correct. Does that make sense? And so my leaders, David, would and that group, would you go to the 0015? Is that what and you're yes.
The travel is 0015. You can recognize that room. Those two rooms are identical to each other, except if you go in 0015, there is artwork from the book of Ruth on the wall, and the first one says Ruth in big letters, which is how I can always remember that room.
Thank you.
0015, the travel, 0013, right next door would be international teaching.
You are wonderful. Thank you for clarifying that. I mentioned we will hunt you down if you didn't do your little spiel if you're a John Wesley fellow. So I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Are you ready to give us a quick, we only have a few, so we're going to get these done before you all leave. You tried to hide from me, so here you go.
This is the least great time to do this, isn't it? All right, so very briefly, Jeff Conklin Miller, great to be here. I've got... I'm a clergy member of the California Pacific Annual Conference. I have sort of a strange appointment. I'm appointed at the Claremont School of Theology, which I'm on the faculty, teach Methodist Studies, Evangelism, Mission. I'm also appointed to the Methodist Church of Britain, where I'm a recognized and regarded presbyter and appointed to Cliff College, where I've been teaching the last 3 years. Have been living in the UK, in Manchester. Have moved back to the US. It was in the UK I achieved my greatest educational success of my life. It was not my doctoral degree. It was passing the practical driving exam to receive a British driving license. And so I want to go back to Britain to really get everything I got put into that, to get out of that. Teach mission and evangelism both at Cliff and at Claremont. And we have 2 kids who are adults. Shannon, many of you know my wife, Shannon Conklin-Miller, also a clergy member in Calpac, and has worked for GBHEM, General Board of Higher Education. She stepped out of that work this last year and is now doing some work with the Susanna Wesley Foundation at Southlands College and doing some project work around global chaplaincy and formation. So it's good to be back. Good to see you.
And I think I'm doing this because I'm a little bit behind on getting this all set up. Would you please give thank you to our wonderful caterer? Why don't you see if she has done a fantastic job. Thank you for all you've done. And then I think I missed one more guest, and I am sorry. Phil Talon, will you stand up? He is from Houston Christian, and he's been with us a couple years here. Just brief, tell us about it.
Thank you. Well, I've gotten to talk to most of you, but if I haven't, I hope to get to. I'm Phil Talon. I'm the Dean of the School of Christian Thought at Houston Christian University, and that we've got undergraduates. We have Houston Theological Seminary. We just launched a Doctor of Ministry program a few years ago, and I have a wonderful group of colleagues, and it's our goal just to be the best seminary we can for Houston. We serve a lot of different denominations and churches in a very diverse city, and it's exciting to do ministry there. Some of you, if people know me, it's simply because I wrote the Absolute Basics of the Christian Faith, so a book from Seedbed that seems to have gained a lot of traction in Methodist and Wesleyan churches, as well as the Absolute Basics of the Wesleyan Way with Justice Hunter as well. And most of my research, though, is on theology and the arts. So that's my happy place where I like to study and research and talk. So thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And then one more shout out. Dr. Still, will you please stand? We didn't get to give you a clap last year for your gracious support, or last night, I'm sorry, for your gracious support with what we did at Lanier, and always what you do. You are a great supporter of the foundation. So it looks like we missed Robert and Mary Pat Beckham. They took off, and so did Dr. Rob and Beverly. So send them emails. Just tell Dr. Rob how appreciative you are of everything they do. I don't think he hears it enough. So, that would be really special. If you need his email, let me know. Okay, 0013 and 0015, you are ready to go through the line, and then we'll follow with those that are staying in this room. Sound good?
We've got a USB-C. I'm great, and I'll leave it.
Well, it's really,
yeah, I got one.
For Simon is the trust story of being adopted.
Chris, you did the scholarship one?
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of people.
We can go deeper on that.
That's where our tour begins the first So the standard
that involves travel. That involves they're really flexible.
Okay, if you are staying in here for either the Wesleyan option or to talk more about collaborative research grants, you may go through. And Brian is going to talk with you or be willing to talk with you more about research grants, and we'll do that over here. And the Wesleyan option will be over here. So we'll try and divide a little bit. Yes, yes. And I'll help you through it. So.
Right, like the courses downstream, and they've never said
missing a toe on their right foot.
I just kind of talk to like my colleagues and see like maybe like something about our society, like where people come and do that, we can get CEU credit for it. So then there's some kind of way to teach these, you know what I mean? So I'm just kind of thinking these big ideas, but I thought there might be something there, and I wondered what you thought of.
What are the liturgical resources?
Which one are you going to?
Oh, good. And how to make it accessible, helping to how to so it is a kind of subject course of study that you
Hey, thank you so much.
it makes it great. I can imagine if there's interest from Calvin doing something that didn't volume
what we need to do.
So they've been
We
very.
need to resource that whole, because you're right, they're not all of them are going to be committed enough to travel. But I think that BLS having these section leaders, the section chairs, is bringing together a lot of, you know what I mean, in our denomination. So
Brian, did I hear you're going to host the collaborative grants?
Somehow,
Good.
somewhere, yeah.
That's fantastic. Good. Thanks for doing that.
I know they've got the so there's my thing. They don't publish themselves, so we have to go to the publisher. They're in great rap.
right.
And we've got this we haven't done textbooks yet, but I'm on the editorial pathway too, and I think maybe so let's go talk. Bottom line, I'll follow your lead. I'm telling you what I'm seeing from my perspective, and you've got a better feel for what the society might benefit from most. And I'll also say this: they have a pretty good track record of once you get a good relationship. I would love to talk. I'm going to make a note.
Okay, that's my other question. Because I know Powers has gotten a grant too. It has to be for the scholarship one. You have to be finished. It didn't say graduate student. So like, I mean, I'm happy to do the legwork on the application, but it'd have to go through someone who's connected to the institution. So I really like that curriculum idea. I don't know. I was just thinking at that talk yesterday. I'm like, you want to get money to liturgical studies. We are starting liturgical studies renewal. What should we do with this money? And I'm at Calvin, right? So like, I feel like there's a really good argument too that one of Calvin's systematic theologians is trying to get the curriculum dispersed because of this new need for accommodation.
Let's talk. So I think my timeline, I don't know how this will work. And I would. There's always a tension between having enough people to get momentum, but not spreading the actual resource. I think perhaps it's 25, maybe 35.
I saw 25, I think.
Well, I was going to write mine for was a sabbatical because they just pulled all our funding. I was going to write one, and I was doing one. So I was going to write one for sabbatical next fall with some travel. I don't know that needs to be an option. Invite anyone. Mine is obviously more history. This would be multiple balls, right? So they might need to gauge interest, make agent
Yeah. Or if we, I guess, I don't want to spread the attention of. Not everybody, like Patrick Eby is a historian, not a liturgical historian, right? You know what I mean? So I don't know that he's the best person to write the book on liturgical theology since we're going to give on AFTE. You know what I mean? I don't want to spread you too thin, but I do a decent bit of publishing. I mean, especially WTJ, we put out a paperback every 6 months, so I just edit all the time. I've done 2, edit volumes already, so I'd be very comfortable leading that project. It's just more designing. I wouldn't even know what